Playtime or pie charts, porridge or PowerPoint. More and more dads choose to swap the office for the nursery and spend time with their children. But what happens to men during pregnancy, birth, and the first years of their baby's life? In this film, we discover what science knows about dads.
Man weiß, dass die männlichen Hormone abfallen unter der Geburt.
The brain changes after you become a father.
What's wonderful about the father-child relationship is that dads are a different sort of parent.
We spend time with young dads and experience how being a father changes them.
Dieses enormes emotionales Gefühl, weil du jetzt weißt, du bist in ein paar Minuten bist du Vater.
Je suis impatient de voir ce que ça fait de devoir s'occuper de 2 enfants en même temps.
I'm starting to see when she learns to crawl, when she learns to walk, when she says her first words. I mean, that's awesome.
Berlin, Germany. Alexander Kurter and his wife Anja live in the Mitte district. Soon, there will be 3 of them. They're expecting their first child in 6 weeks.
Ich bin aufgeregt. Also das ist ja eine total spannende Situation, die man so noch gar nicht kennt. Und man weiß auch nicht, was dann passiert und wie sich das Ganze weiterentwickelt. Also insofern ist sehr viel Vorfreude, natürlich auch ein bisschen Angst. Aber so eine Gemütslage aus allem zusammen quasi.
The pram has arrived. Everything revolves around the birth and what is going to happen.
Mir geht's gut, wenn ich einschlafe, aber ich mache mir natürlich schon gewisse Gedanken. Vielleicht bin ich irgendwo gerade in Wildau, halt gerade eine Vorlesung, Übung, was weiß ich auch immer und muss dann irgendwie durch den Verkehr von Berlin durchkommen, irgendwie zum Klinikum. Wie funktioniert das mit Anja? Ist da jemand da, der ihr helfen kann, dass sie dann auch entsprechend ins Krankenhaus kommt? Ne? Also das sind so die Sachen, die mich umtreiben, über die ich nachdenke.
Also ich würde nicht sagen, dass ich Angst habe. Jetzt die wichtigste Sache ist, ob das Kind sich dreht oder nicht, weil er liegt immer noch in Beckenlage, also mit Beinen nach unten. Und wenn er sich dreht, dann würde ich mich super freuen, wenn da ein Spontangeburt gibt, weil so habe ich mir das ein bisschen schon vorgestellt. Aber Hauptsache, er kommt gesund zur Welt.
Läuft.
But what about the man? Who takes care of his well-being? And what happens to him during pregnancy? Buckinghamshire in England. Dr. Anna Machin lives with her family and dogs just outside Oxford. The evolutionary anthropologist has been researching fatherhood for years. At Oxford University, she conducted a large study and wrote a book about dads. The trigger was the dramatic birth of her first daughter.
My husband witnessed what was basically a car crash happening in front of him when we were giving birth. He thought he was going to lose both of us, and we both came quite close to death. Afterwards, I was offered lots of counselling to deal with my trauma from this birth. And actually, I didn't really need it because I was unconscious, so I hadn't seen anything. He had witnessed everything, and they offered him nothing. So when I went back to work, I thought, I want to find out who a human father is, and I want to talk about the positive story of human fatherhood. As an evolutionary anthropologist, I understand how rare human fatherhood is. We're the only ape that has it, and we're only one of 5% of mammals. I really genuinely do believe fatherhood begins in pregnancy. I think we have this idea that fathers are and they are physically distant, obviously, from the process of having a baby. They're not having that immense physical closeness that a mother's having. But we know that fathers do, in fact, start to bond with their baby before the baby is born.
Professor Kai Buhling, a gynecologist from Hamburg, also thinks that fatherhood begins during pregnancy.
dass bei der eigenen Frau da irgendetwas wächst, was ja beiden in Anführungszeichen gehört, ist ja eine wirkliche Besonderheit. Gerade dadurch, dass man Ultraschall machen kann und das auch sichtbar machen kann, ist das für die Männer vielleicht einerseits sogar schwieriger, weil sie plötzlich sehen, da ist was.
Women go through major hormonal changes during pregnancy. Surprisingly, men do too.
Da wäre insbesondere zu erwähnen, dass Prolaktin, das ist das milchbildende Hormon. Das klingt jetzt fast ein bisschen lustig, wenn man darüber nachdenkt, nicht, dass bei den Männern dieses Hormon ansteigt. Ist aber so. Und dieses Prolaktin vermag auch die Achse, die Steuerachse, die die männlichen Hormone steuert, runter zu regulieren. Und ich vermute, dass das auch der Grund ist, dass das Testosteron bei den Männern im Verlauf der Schwangerschaft und gerade nach der Geburt dann abfällt. Dieses führt dazu, dass die Männer sich erstmal in Ruhe auf ihre Familie konzentrieren können.
Near Fontainebleau, south of Paris in France. It's the beginning of April. Nuno Dominguez and his partner, Margot Audibert, have just moved here. They're expecting their second baby in 2 months.
C'est trop mignon. Fais des piles avec les tailles. Faudrait acheter de la terre de souvenir.
Je suis pas nerveux. On va dire que je suis impatient de voir ce que ça fait de devoir s'occuper de 2 enfants en même temps.
Their daughter Elma is taking a nap. Time to organize the clothes for their new baby. Only Nuno knows whether it'll be a boy or a girl.
Moi, je sais pas. Et je veux pas savoir. Je veux le découvrir à la naissance.
Bah alors, pour elle, ouais, c'est surtout la santé. Mais moi, je peux pas attendre 9 mois sans savoir ce que c'est. C'est trop long, c'est pas possible.
Nuno thinks he heard Elma cry. It's time to wake up the 1.5-year-old anyway. Otherwise, she won't fall asleep at night.
On ouvre le volet. Tu te lèves? Elle est bien. Non, elle est gigoteuse.
It's a weekend, the only chance for Nuno to spend time with his family.
On va voir maman. Allez, viens.
During the week, he works long hours and tries to juggle work and family life.
Ça a changé ma vie, effectivement. J'ai moins de temps pour moi, j'ai moins de temps libre, puisque Alma nous prend quand même beaucoup de temps. Enfin, on a quand même de la chance parce qu'elle est, on trouve qu'elle est facile à gérer, elle est plutôt agréable à vivre. Et puis, c'est assez fatigant. Non, c'est pas ici. Tu me le donnes. Pourquoi tu fais ça? Ça se mange pas. Mais non, ça se mange pas. C'est moi qui le mets. Le défi le plus dur, c'est d'essayer d'avoir assez de temps pour s'occuper de son enfant, parce qu'on travaille du lundi au vendredi, comme tout le monde. Et le week-end, c'est pas suffisant. J'aimerais bien passer du temps du lundi au dimanche avec mon enfant.
Margot's second pregnancy is going smoothly, but still, it will be too much without her husband.
Je pourrais pas m'en sortir sans lui. Et je m'estime vraiment chanceuse de l'avoir. Ça me permet de me reposer, en fait. Et heureusement qu'il est là, parce que j'ai du mal à la porter le matin, j'ai du mal à la descendre dans les escaliers. Donc heureusement qu'il m'aide beaucoup.
Tu mets l'autre bras? On change? On change? Tiens.
Bedtime. The weekend was far too short.
On va avoir papier en bas, Anna?
Leiden, the Netherlands. Marianne Bakermans is a professor of family studies at Leiden University. Her focus? fathers.
In research on parenting, it's too often that we say that we do a study on parents, whereas actually a study on mothering and not on the father's role. So that's why I think it's good to bring some balance in the field and to pay more attention to the fathers, especially in the transition to fatherhood.
Mariam Bakkerman studies the first 1,000 days of dads. For example, she conducts ultrasound video feedback sessions between week 21 and 30 of the pregnancy. She asks fathers to interact with their unborn babies, for example, by reading them a book. Nearly 100 fathers took part in the study.
Een jonge vis zwom achter hem aan. Regenboog, regenboog, mag ik je wat vragen? Ik wil zo graag een van je schubben, eentje maar. Ik vind ze zo mooi en je hebt er zoveel.
We give the father the opportunity to interact with the infant. It's never been done before. And doing so, we provide the father with the opportunity to take the perspective of the fetus and of the newborn, that this is a human being with a mind of its own, who needs the father's attention and protection. We know that fathers like to be more involved. Fathers who are more involved during pregnancy are also more involved after the birth of the baby.
That you're building your little house deep in the desert. You're living for nothing now. I hope you're keeping some kind of record. And Jane came by with a lock of your hair.
After the session, each father gets a video showing how the baby reacted.
Music on Clinton Street all through the evening.
Starting in the second trimester of the pregnancy and increasing during the third trimester of the pregnancy, the baby recognizes the voices of its mother and of its father, and you can see that from their heartbeat increase when she or he hears the father or the mother talk to them. And they also touch the wall of the uterus longer when there's touch from the outside. And that's what we saw here too. When the father did some massage of the abdomen of the mother, we saw that the baby raised her hand and sort of made contact with what was happening outside.
But pregnancy can also be unpleasant, not only for women, but also for men. Some expectant fathers suffer from similar symptoms to their partners. This is called the Couvard syndrome.
If we look now at prevalences, it varies widely from around 20% to over 70%. And I think that has something to do with when you call it a Couvard. There are a number of physical symptoms like gaining weight or losing weight, morning sickness, leg cramps, back pain, but also psychological symptoms like being worried, mood swings, sleep more, sleep less.
What we think it is it's in a way a psychosomatic representation of levels of stress that are experienced during pregnancy for men. Because the men who get it tend to be men who are maybe younger, so quite a lot of teenage fathers get Couvard syndrome. Men who for maybe didn't have a male role model when they were growing up and therefore are worried about how they're going to take on this role, or men for whom the pregnancy might have been unwanted or a surprise.
Back in Berlin. Preparing for the baby puts extra stress on Alexander Kurte, because his job is quite demanding.
Nee, mehr als 10 Meter muss es nicht sein. Ich bin Ingenieur für Luft- und Raumfahrttechnik. Ja, und das hat so zwei Aspekte in meinem beruflichen Alltag. Der eine Aspekt ist, dass ich hier Chefingenieur meiner eigenen Firma bin, die ich zusammen mit einem Freund gegründet habe vor 2,5 Jahren. Und auf der anderen Seite bin ich aber noch als Dozent tätig an der Hochschule.
He rarely leaves the office before 7 p.m.
Es ist mehr als ein Beruf. Es ist mein erstes Baby. Man investiert hier einfach ganz viel rein. Man hat natürlich auch eine gewisse Verantwortung. Also es ist eine Verantwortung gegenüber den Mitarbeitern, eine Verantwortung gegenüber der Firma. Also da steckt schon sehr viel drin, sehr viel Leidenschaft.
But today Alexander finishes early because his wife is due for a checkup at the university clinic, which is being carried out by head physician Wolfgang Henrich.
Schwarz ist der Magen, ja. So. Ah, der Po ist unten.
Ja.
Der Po ist unten. Das Schwarze, das ist alles Fruchtwasser, das ist normal, das ist der Urin des Ungeborenen. Keine Nabelschnurumschlinge um den Hals, das ist immer wichtig. Ja.
Das ist gut.
Und da ist der Kopf. Ja, das Gesäß, wie gesagt, zurzeit noch unten bei 33 Wochen. Man kann versuchen, das von außen zu drehen. Ja, aber da reden wir in 3,5 Wochen drüber. Manchmal drehen sie sich von alleine. So, gesetzt den Fall, die äußere Wendung funktioniert nicht, dann gibt es zwei Möglichkeiten. Entweder man sagt, okay, ich kann auch ein Kind aus Beckenendlage vaginal gebären. Viele der Frauen wählen dann aber auch zugegebenermaßen den Kaiserschnitt, um die höhere Sicherheit für das Kind in Anspruch zu nehmen. Auf der anderen Seite sind wir immer mit so dem ersten Kaiserschnitt auch zögerlich, vor allem wenn er nicht zwingend sein muss, weil eben ein Kaiserschnitt für Folgeschwangerschaften wiederum auch eine Belastung sein kann.
Also es war für mich ja erst das zweite Mal, dass ich bei der Ultraschalluntersuchung dabei war. Und das war total toll, also das auch zu sehen. Trotzdem auf der anderen Seite schwingt natürlich immer noch ein bisschen im Hinterkopf mit, dass das Kind immer noch in Beckenlage ist. Und das hat man jetzt auch gesehen auf den Videos.
In Germany, the average age of first-time dads at birth is 33 years. Alexander Kurter is 36 years old.
Das spielt bei mir tatsächlich auch im Hinterkopf immer die Rolle, ist man dann nicht irgendwann zu alt? Also ich meine, man möchte mit seinem Kind Fußball spielen, man möchte vielleicht irgendwelche Aktivitäten machen und man kann einfach nur hoffen, dass man gesund bleibt und so viel dem Kind auch mit auf den Weg geben kann wie möglich.
But is the father's age really important for the child?
Wenn Sie jetzt fragen nach den genetischen sozusagen Risiken für das Ungeborene oder dann Neugeborene, ist es in der Tat so, auch dass ältere Väter für einige der angeborenen Fehlbildungen oder Syndrome mitverantwortlich sind. Das sind nicht so sehr viele, aber nachgewiesen ist es für eine bestimmte Skelettdysplasie beispielsweise, die Achondroplasie. Hier spielt offensichtlich das Alter des Vaters eine Rolle. Aber im ganz Großen und Ganzen ist es so, dass wirklich in der Tat das Alter der Mutter eine deutlich größere Rolle spielt.
Täby, Sweden, a suburb of Stockholm popular with young families. Matthias Spar is 35 years old. He and his wife Johanna have 2 children. He has very positive memories of the births in 2019 and 2021.
They're surreal, but amazing. Because at like 5 minutes before, the fetus is in the womb or on its way out, and then suddenly it's in your hands. And you've been waiting for it for 9 months. It's amazing, but also crazy. You have this little person that knows how to breathe the first thing it does, and it just works. And you're happy it's over, you're happy everyone's doing good, which we were fortunate that was the case. The first one was actively started, so that took a long time. I think we were at the hospital for 36 hours or so. And I was present during birth, giving as much support as I could, which is not a lot as a man. And the second child was a lot faster, so that started during the morning, and we went to the hospital, and she was born during the afternoon, so that was only a couple of hours.
But things don't always go as well as they did for Astrid and Olof. Because birth can be a beautiful, but also a stressful experience for a man. Many feel helpless when they have to watch their partners suffer during childbirth. Hamburg, Germany. Professor Kai Bühling wants to know what happens to men during childbirth. As part of a study, he asked fathers whether they were negatively affected by it.
Dabei kam heraus, dass es schon viele gab, die sich gut mental darauf vorbereitet haben. Ich würde sagen, dass um die 80–90% positiv waren. Und da gab es einen kleineren Teil, diese 10%, die vielleicht dann Angst hatten, nach der Geburt auch irgendwie Probleme zu haben. Zum Beispiel die Sexualität beeinflussen kann. Und das kam auch heraus, dass Patientinnen beziehungsweise die Väter durchaus angaben, dass das jetzt im Nachhinein schon wahrscheinlich einen Einfluss nehmen wird. Die Frau so nackt gesehen zu haben, die Frau vielleicht so verletzlich gesehen zu haben.
Birth is a really tricky time for men because a lot of them do find it hard to find a role. So certainly I think we need to first of all ask the question, does the man want to be there? Generally men do. Secondly, then, what is that role? Do you simply want to be in that supporting role? Do you want to have a particular role involving, physically supporting your partner? Sometimes it's a good idea for a father maybe to be an advocate for his partner, particularly if she's at that stage of birth where she can't express her own needs. Discuss what will your partner need? What are your partner's desires, for example, in relation to painkillers?
In Europe, around 85% of dads are present during birth. This, however, isn't always possible. For example, during an emergency cesarean section.
Da darf nichts schiefgehen, da darf man keine Fehlintubation machen. Das ist, glaube ich, überfordernd, diese Situation für einen Angehörigen. Und deswegen nehmen wir in diesen Notfallsituationen die Väter also aus dieser Szene heraus.
Ich habe auch versucht, immer dafür zu sorgen, dass eine Hebamme dann auch mal zwischendurch zu dem werdenden Vater, der dann im Kreissaal sitzt, komplett alleine hingeht und einfach kurz mit ihm spricht und sagt, das ist eigentlich alles in Ordnung. Wir haben es im Griff. Optimalerweise hat sie ihm das Kind dann auch gebracht, was er dann in der Zeit halten konnte.
Berlin, 20th of April, 7 a.m. Anja Kurter's waters are broken. The baby is still in breech position and could not be turned. Anja and Alexander wanted to have a planned cesarean section next week, but now things have changed. Alexander Kurter is allowed to be present at birth.
Natürlich ist es dieses enormes emotionales Gefühl, was dich da überkommt, weil du jetzt weißt, okay, in ein paar Minuten bist du Vater. Das ist halt was ganz anderes. Das ist eine Situation, die du so vorher dir zwar immer hast simulieren können oder hast ausmalen können, aber nie mit der du wirklich real konfrontiert bist.
The delivery went well. But now something seems to be wrong.
Wir sind aber direkt hier nebenan, ja, hier im Raum, weil es aber im Flur deutlich wärmer ist. Und wenn die Kinderärzte die Kinder auch einmal in den Händen haben, dann nehmen sie es auch die anderen gut zu untersuchen. Das ist die sofort. Die Mutterkuchen ist auch da. So lange hat es gar nicht gedauert.
The pediatricians give the all clear. The baby is fine.
Ja, Sie können auch gehen.
Also allein schon dieser erste Schrei, dieser Moment, wo du diesen ersten Schrei hörst, wow, das ist einfach nur Wahnsinn. schöne Haare. Also es gab halt diesen kleinen Schockmoment, als die Hebamme ihn auch genommen hat, das habe ich mitbekommen. Dass er da an der Stelle mal kurz nicht geatmet hat. Da ging es mir nicht so gut. Ich wollte aber in dem Moment einfach nur Anja auch beruhigen. Aber dann ist er wiedergekommen und seit dem Moment war dann alles super. Und jetzt, wo er auch schreit, wo dann jetzt auch alles Fruchtwasser so ein bisschen rauskommt, ist alles super. Wahnsinn. Es war Emotion pur, es war einfach nur Wahnsinn. Na, Iggy, es war einfach nur Wahnsinn, dass du jetzt auf dieser Welt bist.
Mir geht's gut, also ich bin durcheinander und ich merke langsam die Schmerzen, aber ansonsten, ich bin super glücklich. Das kann man nicht beschreiben, dieses Gefühl.
6 pounds and 20 inches. A delicate but healthy boy. Ignaz Konstantin is his full name, but his parents just call him Iggy. A unique moment. Psychologically, physically, and neurologically, a woman's but also a man's body changes during birth.
Beim Mann ist es unter der Geburt so, dass das Cortisol natürlich zur Geburt hin ansteigt. Das ist eine Stresssituation, die natürlich nachvollziehbar ist. Und was man in Studien gesehen hat, ist, wenn man jetzt die Hormonwerte des Testosterons, des männlichen Hormons vor und nach der Geburt miteinander vergleicht, dann kommt es zum Abfall. Bedeutet, dass die Männer weniger Testosteron, geringere Testosteronkonzentration im Blut haben, was wahrscheinlich dem Nestbau, diesem ruhiger werden dienen soll.
The drop in testosterone that occurs in new fathers following birth is significant. It can be up to a third of their testosterone, so 33% of their testosterone will drop. And generally, the levels of testosterone never return to pre-birth levels, so pre-fatherhood levels, as long as the father remains in contact in some way with that child. We have so much data now that shows it's not a cultural cause, it's definitely a biological evolutionary cause that causes that testosterone to drop.
Back to France, near Fontainebleau. 2.5 weeks ago, Nuno Dominguez and Margot Audibert became parents for the second time. A girl, Celeste.
Allez, viens voir ta sœur. L'accouchement, il s'est bien passé. C'était un peu stressant, différent de la première fois. Là, on est parti tard à la maternité. On est arrivé très juste et l'accouchement a duré, je sais pas, une demi-heure. En 30 minutes, c'était fait, elle était déjà née, Céleste. Du coup, différent de la première fois, parce que la première fois, ça a pris, je sais plus d'un jour. Et là, c'est allé hyper vite. C'était complètement différent. Et assister à l'accouchement, à côté d'elle, ça c'est très bien. En plus, ça l'aide. Donc, non, je pense que c'est une bonne chose. Et moi, ça me fait plaisir de toute façon d'être là, d'entendre pleurer l'enfant la première fois, de couper le cordon.
Je suis super contente. Enfin, c'est vraiment totalement différent que pour la première fois. En fait, je me sens mieux et je me sens moins fatiguée. Et je suis trop contente d'avoir enfin mon deuxième bébé.
Now they're trying to master everyday life as a family of 4 and enjoy the precious first moments.
Pour l'instant, je travaille. J'ai pas encore pris mon congé paternité. Donc, je fais beaucoup de télétravail, encore plus que là récemment. Là, je vais peut-être au bureau qu'une seule fois par semaine. Et sinon, après, tout le reste du temps, je suis là. Justement, pour aider Margot. Parce que moi, je suis pas forcément très fatigué. Je me réveille la nuit, une fois dans la nuit, au milieu de la nuit, mais ça va, j'arrive à récupérer. Et non, je suis surtout très content maintenant d'avoir un nouvel enfant. La fatigue, c'est pas très grave.
But not all fathers have emotional highs like Nuno. Men can also suffer from postnatal depression.
Overall, the drop in testosterone following birth is a good thing because it's really important for priming dad. The drop in testosterone also increases the efficacy of dopamine and oxytocin on the brain, which means it increases those lovely bonding chemicals. The downside is high testosterone is preventative against depression. So if we see a drop in testosterone, unfortunately, it does increase the likelihood, the chance that a man will experience depression. There are other factors that come in to share that. So just that drop alone generally doesn't cause depression.
Cambridge, England. Child psychiatrist Professor Paul Ramchandani works at the University of Cambridge. One of his main areas of research is the mental health of parents, especially fathers.
In studies across the world, pretty much, it's fairly consistent that somewhere between 1 in 20, maybe even up to 1 in 10 dads are affected by high levels of depression at this time. There are the range of causes for why people get depressed at any time. And then if we're thinking particularly about dads of new babies, you've got the disruption to family life. You've got the sleep disturbance, which is a big challenge. And you've got particularly new dads trying to juggle now, how do I do my job with how do I contribute to looking after this baby. So it's a hugely overlooked area, I think. We've been better in recent years at letting people know that depression is there and that there are forms of help that they can get, but there's still a big gap, I think.
But most fathers do not get depressed. On the contrary, many enjoy being a dad. In Sweden, Matthias Spar is on parental leave while his wife works. He's at home with his daughter Astrid, who is 9 months old. 3-year-old Olof is at daycare.
At the moment, I love it. I mean, I've been home for 3 months now with her, and it's great. It really is. But it's also, I mean, you're starting to get the routine of the days. So you're doing basically the same thing, and you see what works and what doesn't work.
Matthias wants to take 10 months parental leave. Astrid will start going to the daycare centre when she's 1.5 years old.
This is what makes it all worth it. I mean, for me now, I'm starting to see when she learns to crawl, when she learns to walk, when she says her first words. I mean, that's awesome. And I don't think when you come lying on your deathbed and someone asks you what would you do differently, it's not I would have spent more days at the office. That's not what you're saying. So, yeah, definitely worth it.
At 3 p.m, Matthias picks up Olof from daycare. Looking after his kids is a full-time job.
It is a different life, but I used to play a lot of golf. I don't anymore, which is natural and it's okay, but it has changed. It's made me more reflective of who I am. I think I think about how I present things, how I explain things, how I act and am in order to be a good example for them. The thing about like living in the moment is actually kind of present with kids, because you know it'll pass. Even good times will pass and bad times will pass. So you have to remember that everything goes in cycles, basically. So I think you're more appreciative of the good times.
Johanna comes home from work in the evening. Then she takes over the children.
Don't think like the gender or mother-father perspective changed how we divided the responsibilities and so on. It's more perhaps like who is in what stage of their career, who has to prioritize work right now.
Different dads deal with their role in different ways. Now researchers have studied for the first time what happens to dads' brains during this process. Tel Aviv, Israel. For years, neurobiologist Professor Ruth Feldman has been researching the behavior of fathers and mothers in relation to their children. She believes a lot more is going on with dads than most of us think.
Fatherhood depends on how much you invest in caregiving. You know, pick up your sleeve and takes care of the baby, but fatherhood, the biology, follows the behavior. So the more you do, the more plasticity you will get in your brain, the more your brain will reorganize around that attachment bond.
To prove this, Ruth Feldman conducted several studies. In one experiment, she measured the levels of the bonding hormone oxytocin in fathers and mothers 6 months after the birth of the child.
And we saw that oxytocin in mothers and in fathers were similar. And this was very surprising because researchers always believed that mothers are biologically prepared to care for infants. That really showed that it's not exactly so. Maybe the pathway to maternal care and the pathway to paternal care are somewhat different, but fathers have it within them biologically to care for infants. Give a smile. Give a smile.
Ruth Feldman went a step further and looked at the brains of heterosexual and homosexual fathers and compared them to the brains of mothers.
What we saw in the brain is that the entire attachment network activated to infant stimuli in all parents, whether it's men or women, primary caregiver, secondary caregiver, biological parents, and adoptive parents. We had 2 surprises. One is that the amygdala activates in mothers 5 times more than in fathers. So mothers are those who are highly vigilant to infant safety. Amygdala is a very ancient structure. It's deep in the brain. It's an automatically functioning system that tells us what changes can happen in the environment that could be potentially harmful.
But there is something interesting happening in fathers' brains. Ruth Feldman found that a brain region called sulcus temporalis superior, STS for short, is much more active in fathers than in mothers. This is the area that enables parents to understand the non-verbal signals of their babies.
We thought that there are 2 pathways to parenting. One that is more evolutionary ancient. You see it in all mammals, and that makes mothers very, very vigilant to infant safety. And one that is more evolutionarily recent and is cortical, and it comes by getting to know your infant and learning his or her signals.
Another big surprise were the results of the brain scans of homosexual fathers.
Gay fathers who are both primary caregivers have the same STS, the paternal father. They also have very high activation of the amygdala. Now, since the amygdala is activated by the hormones of pregnancy and childbirth, where did these fathers get such a high amygdala activation? When the father alone takes care of the baby, the more his paternal pathway will recruit the maternal pathway, and his amygdala will increase in activation. So actually what we see here is that the paternal pathway depends on active caregiving, whereas mothers get it for free.
So fathers should spend as much time as possible with their children, like Matthias. He can do so thanks to the Swedish welfare system.
I don't get 100%. There's different levels and setups in Sweden. So there's a minimum level that you get from the state, depending on what you earn. And then a lot of companies have additional financial support for people on maternity or paternity leave. So I get that additional financial support.
Visit to an open daycare group. It's free of charge and hugely popular with fathers on parental leave.
I'll be awake.
Säg hästen.
Ja, just det. Snarare än...
Around 80% of fathers in Sweden take parental leave.
With my first kid, I was on parental leave for 6 months. With my second, 7 months. And now I thought this is the third time, so I will take a longer one.
Actually, I am apparently since December, and I'm going to be apparently in up to April.
So I've been looking into taking my wife to another country and work, but then we got pregnant, and then after that I didn't want to move because Sweden is the best country in the world to be in when you have kids.
One reason why Swedish men take so much more parental leave is that the government has repeatedly created new incentives for it. Stockholm University. Ann-Sophie de Vander is a professor of sociology and demography. One of her main areas of research is the concept of parental leave.
It was already in the 70s that fathers could use the parental leave in Sweden. But then in the 90s, when part of the leave was reserved for fathers, then almost all fathers started to use the leave. And that did really change matters. And today it is taken for granted that fathers are using the leave. Actually, the leave is structured so that you have 8 months each. 2 parents have 8 months each. And it's gender neutral, so if it's 2 mothers or 2 fathers, it doesn't matter, but 8 months each. Then you can give or transfer part of those 8 months to the other parent if you want to. So you can transfer 5 out of the 8 months, but 3 months you have to use yourself. If you don't use it, then it will be gone.
Fathers in France can but dream of the Swedish model. Nuno Dominguez can only take a month off, otherwise he loses too much money.
Alors moi, congé parental, je le prendrai pas. J'en prendrai pas. Margot va en prendre un. Je vais prendre le congé paternité. Mais je sais pas, donc on a droit à 4 semaines. Je sais pas si je vais pouvoir enchaîner les 4 semaines, parce que c'est long de pas bosser pendant les 4 semaines, mais je vais prendre quelques jours un peu par-ci par-là pour prendre les 4 semaines en tout, mais pas en une fois. Et donc après ça, j'aurai plus rien.
University of Cambridge. Professor Paul Ramchandani analyses how fathers play with their young children. He has conducted several studies on this.
In those studies, we were able to go to parents' homes when they had babies at 3 months old and then follow them up at 1 and at 2 years old. And there were a few different findings from that, but I guess one of the key ones was that where fathers were able to be more engaged in play, so the higher level of engagement in play with their very young children, 3 months old, those children, when they got to 1 and 2, had better outcomes in terms of their cognitive development and their behavioural development. So something, again, in those early interactions seems quite important.
That sounds like a good game. I'm going to leave you to play it and try it if you want to.
He also analyses whether fathers play differently from mothers.
So that's just like our fighting game, but we'll try to remove each of the socks.
No, Dad, we're not playing that game.
Okay. Well,
I'm just taking them off so if I want to go on the couch, I can.
Okay.
There's a lot of overlap between mums and dads. It's not like dads are over here and mums are over here. There's a huge amount of overlap, but on average, dads do more physical play. And that kind of rough and tumble play, that sock wrestling game and other games like it.
When we come back, got you now.
And one of the things that you see, and you see it in the rough and tumble play, I think really quite nicely, is that children have to learn quite a lot about regulating their emotions and regulating themselves when they're doing rough and tumble. So they learn, oh, if I hit too hard, that can hurt my parent, and they get feedback on that in a safe, usually in a safe environment.
Long-term studies show similar results. Ruth Feldman has accompanied fathers and their children from birth to adulthood.
And then we look in adolescent and we see that those children who had a good relationship with their father were able to handle conflicts in a better way. So in a way, a positive relationship with a father allows a child to deal with the hardships of life.
Berlin. Iggy is putting on weight every day. Alexander Kurter is slowly but surely getting into the routine of things. He's back at work, but tries to help where he can.
Ich hatte gestern das Glück, einen halben Tag mit Iggy bei mir im Büro zu verbringen. Anja war bei ihrer Frauenärztin. Und dann bin ich das erste Mal mit ihm alleine mit der S-Bahn quasi auch nach Hause gefahren. Das war dann schon cool. Also einfach mit dem Kinderwagen durchzugehen, das hat schon Spaß gemacht auf jeden Fall.
Ja, was ist los?
Das ist für mich einfach ein Wunder. Und ich kann immer noch nicht glauben, dass es unser Sohn ist, dass wir Eltern sind. Das kann man sich vorher nicht vorstellen. Man hat das Baby im Bauch. Aber wenn es schon da ist, es ist einfach wunderschön.
The nights are short. Very short.
5 Finger, ich sehe 5 Finger. Das kannst du mir einen Nuckel geben, bitte?
Du schläfst eine halbe Stunde, dann bist du wieder wach, dann schläfst du wieder eine halbe Stunde, bist du wieder wach. Ich glaube, jeder, der sagt, das ist super, das ist überhaupt kein Problem, dem glaube ich das einfach nicht, weil es ist, glaube ich, ganz normal, dass es halt an den Nerven kratzt. Nichtsdestotrotz muss man sich dann einfach auch mal kurz sammeln und wenn man das zusammen als Team meistert, dann ist es, glaube ich, super.
Alexander will soon be working full-time as a professor and plans to take 3 months of parental leave during half-term. Fontainebleau. Nuno and Margot enjoy the summer as a family of 4. Celeste will stay at home for the first 6 months and then go to a nursery.
Déjà, je suis content d'être père une deuxième fois. J'étais fils unique, moi. Et je voulais pas avoir un seul enfant, parce que moi, à titre perso, c'était pas très fun à la maison d'être tout seul. Bon, maintenant c'est fait, je suis très content. Je sais pas s'il y en aura un troisième.
Tu veux lui faire son gros?
Oui.
Je parle à ton père. Peut-être qu'il y aura d'autres enfants, peut-être qu'il n'y en aura pas. Après, ça me fait très bizarre de me dire que Céleste, ce sera mon dernier bébé et je serai plus jamais enceinte. Là, je me dis, mais c'est pas possible, c'est tellement chouette que je vais sans doute en vouloir d'autres. Mais après, il faut réussir à s'en occuper et avoir le temps à leur consacrer, en fait. Donc... La fermeture est claire.
35 degrees. A heat wave in Sweden. Matthias spends the summer with his family in their summer house outside Stockholm. He's already completed 7 months of parental leave. 3 months are still ahead of him.
I'm heading back in early October and it's now late June, and I think that would be great. I think I have a couple of more months in me, but then I think you need the intellectual challenge of working and not just taking care of the logistics. It's been wonderful, but also a lot of work, and maybe that we as fathers don't give the mothers that are home a lot enough credit, because it's, even though it's simple work in the sense that it's cooking and playing, it's still a lot of work. The level of attention you need takes a lot of energy, but it's so worth it. It's a lot of fun.
I have my stay-at-home dad that can take care of all the more administrative things at home, which makes it a lot easier. I can just come home to a set table and dinner, which is very practical. So it's been a luxury to not having to have this puzzle together with the job. And of course, I want to come home for dinner time so I can meet the kids.
In 3 months, both children will go to daycare, and Matthias and his wife will work full-time. The role of fathers has changed in recent decades. Although mothers still do most of the childcare, fathers are becoming more involved.
Fathers are not this bystander. They're actually very, very involved. So I think, first of all, we have to get that message out and start changing that culture about importance and relevance. And secondly, obviously, it always comes back to governments. It comes back to governments taking that on board and understanding the importance of fathers and actually putting in place legislation that is fit for purpose, that actually allows people to take up that parenting role.
Scientific studies show men change physically and psychologically when they become fathers. And they have a decisive influence on the development of their children.
He's looking at him, he's puzzled. What's going on? No. If you take the role of a father seriously and with commitment and investment, then your brain will change and your hormones will change and your behavior will change. But if you don't and you've spent 20 hours in the office, it's not like mothers, that their body changes because of pregnancy and childbirth. It won't happen. Parenthood will pass you by.
Für die Kinder da zu sein. Ich glaube, das ist ein ganz wesentlicher Punkt. Diese Zeit, die ist irgendwann vorbei. Und dass man einfach sieht, diese Phase kriegt man nicht zurück.
The really important thing, I think, is to try and engage with your children. It's very easy to feel not very skilled or not very good at it, and so to step back because you're concerned. But actually what your children need is for you to get stuck in and engage where you can.
More and more men want to be actively involved fathers. Because in the end, it's not only the kids who benefit, but also the dads.